As Your Heart Betrays You. Part 24. A Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction written and narrated by Mira Rose. Artwork for the opening and thumbnail image by Evenart Adam on Instagram and Tumblr. I will have them linked in the description box. If you haven't heard the previous 23 parts, those are also linked in the description box, so you can check them out there. Now then, if you haven't subscribed, blah blah blah, what are you doing? Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and if you'd like to support the channel further, don't forget to leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. If you aren't sure what to comment, put "if only." Please. Oh, there's a cat. Buddy, I'm recording, dude. You can't just meow at me like that. If you're still listening, please enjoy As Your Heart Betrays You. Part 24. Adrienette, 23 years old. It seemed, as of late, that the only thing Adrien wasn't all but emotionally numb to was his partner. People were exhausting, food didn't taste right, and he couldn't escape work long enough to even attempt to swallow the benefits of being in nature, much less actually do so. Adrien, supermodel, voice actor, aggressed CEO, etc., sprinted the last few years, and it caught up to him. He should have kept his head down and enjoyed the recess being with Ladybug offered, but he got greedy. And he tried to give it a go with his mask on, too. He'd give up everything material to not feel indifferent to the person on his arm, and not for lack of trying, but the one person he wasn't indifferent to didn't care about galas and cars that could feed families for years. So why did he keep running? Why didn't he just open a cheese store in a cottage on the coast? Let his hair lighten with the sun and ocean salt instead of a fluorescent-lit hairdresser's chair every 3 weeks. Why couldn't he be happy without Marinette? It was like the universe wanted him to suffer for hurting her. Back then, he had the best of intentions when he broke it off. If only he asked more questions. If only he could see the forest for the trees. If only he told Ladybug that the butterfly Miraculous wasn't the only one he had. If only, and too late. Such is the fate of a tragic hero, no? 8 years of this, and he still couldn't move on. Timing was never part of his skill set. If only. He was more like his father than he cared to admit. Time machines and alternate timelines and an impending lifetime of regret sifted through dramatics he couldn't tell anyone about because he knew he wasn't being rational. She couldn't know. Ladybug couldn't possibly know the heat that came with her touch, or the scalding words she gave him that he carried around like untreated burns. What's a few more scars when you're living a dream? Well, twisted version of a dream. Maybe he should write down everything he bottled up and throw it into the river. Let the universe decide if she gets the message as he wallowed in the loathing of cowardness. Frustration cooked slowly, rolling him in the cowardness he'd marinated himself. He'd asked her if she wanted him to take off his mask, and still, she'd never drawn a line between them. She dug a trench with spears at the bottom. Never again. He couldn't keep walking on bridges of sharpened wood and wondering why it hurt. He put himself out there as Adrien and as Cat Noir. She didn't want him. Plain and simple. He'd messed everything up, and as always, it would take someone else to fix what he'd gotten himself into.
Kid, you smell worse than forgotten brie,
Plagg said, surrounded by wrappers on the desk. I don't want to keep going, Plagg.
You're being dramatic.
Huh, right. Yeah, sorry about that. My mistake. I'm cured. Thanks.
Happy to help. You owe me a new wheel.
There's plenty of cheese in the pantry.
Not anymore, there isn't.
Plagg let out a burp, then ripped a satisfied smirk. And somehow, simply and undecorated, it all clicked. He could do it. Adrien, for some reason, could imagine himself in a different version of this world. A world where he left Ladybug. A world with him, his Kwame, and a little cheese store on the coast, with a car rusted from the salt air parked behind back. The taste of that vacation of a future filled his lungs so quickly he choked. How had he lived so long while suffocating? If he didn't leave now, staying in Paris might literally kill him.
Plagg, claws out. Wait, what?
Without knowing where he'd go, Cat Noir ran. He didn't stop for photos or babies or people crossing the street. He just left, all but sprinting until he was past Paris proper and tourist traps and a decent view of the Eiffel Tower. Without knowing where he was, he de-transformed so he could buy sunglasses, lemon drops, and a phone that wouldn't call him into a scandal. This was it. This was the path to recovery. He'd leave himself behind and become who he'd always wanted to be. All he had to do was figure out who that was. Okay, yeah, cool. He could do this. Adrien could be his own person. His own person. Words Ladybug slapped him with the week prior rang like tinnitus. Really, Adrien, when have you ever been anything but what you thought other people wanted? What if he couldn't find who he wanted to be, even after leaving it all behind? What if he only becomes who he thinks he wants to be? Isn't that just playing a role with an even harsher director and notes so messy he wouldn't be able to discern the scribbles?
Hey, Adrien,
Plagg wheezed, sitting in his jacket and eating cheese. I don't know. He could anticipate what his Kwame wanted to ask.
You stink.
Okay, well, maybe he hadn't foreseen that. Plagg told him he needed a wash before he'd left, hadn't he? How could he check his pits without grabbing the onlooker's attention? The last thing he wanted was a candid of him with his arms raised like a monkey. But he was giving up on Adrien Agreste, so what did it matter? Adrien raised his arm, took a whiff, and then immediately regretted it, both socially and physically. Okay, time for his supersuit. Adrien slipped to the alley and transformed behind a trash can, ready to continue his journey. What's the phrase? Every adventure begins with the first step? Something like that. Okay, Agrest, you've got this. And for once, there's no route, no plans, no directions, forward or back. Well, okay then. May as well take the scenic route. Thank you so much for listening. Part 25 is on the way. My cat is meowing at the door of the recording booth, so I'm going to catch out of here. If you're still listening, comment. You've got this. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!